Okay, so we've seen how to make variables using the let keyword. Let and then some identifier equals some value. That's a horrible name for a variable, but it does work. It's a valid name. There are actually two other keywords we can use to make variables, and we're going to cover them in this video. The first one is called const. Const stands for constant. Does it stand for constant, or do I just say it's an abbreviated version of constant? Anyways, it means constant, and a constant is a value that does not change. It remains constant. So we use it the same way, const instead of let, and then a space, and then some identifier, and then an equal sign, and then some value, except there's a huge distinction in its behavior. After we create our variable, let's go with const lucky num equals, I don't know, how about 26? Sure. After that, I can recall lucky num at any point, but I cannot increment it or change it or reassign it. So I can't do plus equals 1. I get this error, assignment to constant variable. You just can't do it. A constant variable does not allow you to update the value or change that value. So I can't add 1 to it. I can't decide, actually, my lucky num is 7, just like every basic person on planet Earth who says 7's their lucky number. No, it doesn't work. Assignment to constant variable. So that begs the question, why use constant, or why use const? For now, it may seem quite limited. We could use it to do things like store the value of pi, or store things that we know won't change. If we're making some application where we need to somehow convert from feet to miles or miles to feet, that's not going to change that number. So we could make a constant for that. Const, and then, feet in mile is, 5280 or 5820. It's one of these. Let's just say it's 5280. I think it is. That's not going to change. I can use const. Now that's kind of a special case to use const for an actual mathematical constant, or a value like pi that is constant, or the days in a week, it's always 7. So that's not really the main reason people use const. We just don't know enough about JavaScript at this point to really see why we would use it. So I'm just revealing part of it to you at this point because we're talking about variables, and this is a way of making variables. We use let and const. They both make variables, but const variables cannot be reassigned. But when we get to arrays and objects, data structures in JavaScript, you'll see that const becomes a bit more useful. So for now, just know that it's a thing, and that's good enough. It's a constant variable where JavaScript will yell at you and actually prevent you from updating. I didn't show this, but lucky num, for example, is definitely 26. I tried to set it to 7. JavaScript slapped me in the face, says you cannot do that. It stays at 26. Okay, so that's const. For now, we'll be using let unless we have a constant value that makes sense to put in a const variable. But if we're doing things like, age, and we need to add 1 to age every so often, or we're doing something like score in a game, and that's going to change, we need to use let. So this brings me to the next keyword that we have not yet seen that we can use to make variables, called var. V-A-R. Now this is the old way of making variables. Originally in JavaScript, this was the only method, the only keyword we had to make variables. So everything you'll see in old code bases, in old tutorials, old videos, the previous version of this course, everything was done using var. And it still works. So I'm just going to clear. How about, I don't know. Run distance will be 26.2 for a marathon. So that makes me a variable. I can recall it. I can update it. It works very similarly to let. There are some distinctions, but it's kind of difficult to explain them at this point because we just don't know enough, once again, about some of the more advanced topics in JavaScript. So we will revisit this topic, and you'll learn more about why let and const were introduced. So var was the original and only option for making variables. Then, a couple years ago, let and const were introduced. They are the newer ways of making variables, and you should use them exclusively. You should have no reason to use var. I'm just showing it to you so that you know it exists. You may run into it, but let and const are the new, fancier way of making variables. So let, for now at least with what we know, let allows us to make a variable that we can reassign. Const makes a variable that is a constant value. Eventually we'll see that it is more useful than it may seem at the moment, but those are the two keywords we'll be using.